Welcome to Mindful Moments, where we nourish your mind on the go.
And today we have a special episode.
This is the Deep Dive.
Powered by AI narration.
We're going to do a deep dive today into Lucifer's Hammer.
By Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle.
Have you read this one?
I have read this one.
Okay, good.
It's a classic.
It is.
I think it holds up really well, too.
I think so, too.
It's
one of those that...
it's a page-turner for sure.
It is a page-turner.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is talk about this book and some of the major themes in it and how it kind of relates back to us as people.
Sounds good.
So the book starts out, and we're introduced to Tim Hamner.
Right, an amateur astronomer.
Yeah, he discovers this comet.
Yeah.
Which ends up being Lucifer's hammer.
Which ends up being Lucifer's hammer.
Which they don't know at the time.
Right. But initially there's a lot of excitement.
That's us.
In the scientific community.
Yeah.
You know, new comet discovery. It's
a big deal.
Big deal. But that excitement quickly kind of turns sour when they start to do the calculations and they realize that this thing is not going to miss the Earth.
Well, and then he's got this problem of trying to tell people and get people to believe him.
Right.
And
which is always a problem in these kind of stories.
Yeah, right.
You know, the person who discovers the threat is not believed.
Yeah, and they show this in the book really well.
Yeah.
Where you've got the media who's trying to sensationalize it.
Right. That's what they do.
And then you've got people who are just apathetic.
Right.
And you've got other people who just don't believe it.
Yeah, they're in denial.
Yeah.
And it's really, you know, the book captures this struggle of trying to convince people that something that seems so abstract, you know, a comet hitting the Earth is actually a real threat.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that's something that we can all relate to on some level. You know, we've all had experiences where we've tried to warn people about something.
Right.
And they just haven't listened.
Yeah.
Or they've dismissed it.
Right. Or it's just inconvenient for them to believe.
Right. Exactly.
Or it'll cost them money.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is.
Exactly.
So they just choose not to.
Right. And so I think that's one of the things that makes this book so compelling is that it taps into that very human fear of the unknown.
Yeah. And it also shows how easily we can be misled.
Yes, absolutely.
By either, you know, misinformation or disinformation.
Right.
Or just our own biases.
Right. Or just, you know, wishful thinking.
Yeah.
You know, we want to believe that everything's going to be okay. So we're just going to ignore the warning signs.
Yeah. There's this part in the book where these scientists are trying to explain the impact of the comet to the public, and they're using it like everyday objects.
Right. They're using like ice cream.
Like ice cream and stuff like that.
Trying to show like the scale
of what would happen.
Yeah. It's like a really desperate attempt to try to communicate this complex scientific concept to the public in a way that they can understand.
Yeah. In a relatable way.
Yeah. And it kind of fails.
It does.
It just doesn't really convey the sheer scale of the impending disaster.
Right.
And I think that's another thing that's really interesting about this book is that it highlights the difficulty of communicating science to the public.
Especially when you've got fear and denial mixed in.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's like you can't hear anything if you're afraid.
Right, and especially when you're dealing with something like a comet hitting the Earth, which is just such a catastrophic event that it's hard to even wrap your mind around it.
Right.
You know, it's just so far outside of our everyday experience.
Yeah, it's like almost too big to comprehend.
Right.
So it's easier to just dismiss it as like, oh, that's not going to happen.
Right.
It's not a big deal.
It's not going to happen to me. You know.
It's not going to happen to me.
Famous last words, right?
Right.
But yeah, so I think that's one of the things that Niven and Pournelle do so well in this book is that they really capture the human element of this disaster.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just about the science.
Right.
It's about how people react to the science.
Right. And it's about the people in the story.
Exactly. And how they're all dealing with this in their own way.
Right. And so as the comet gets closer and closer, we start to see how the different characters are dealing with their own personal anxieties and their own personal dramas.
Right.
And how that's kind of intertwined with this looming global threat.
Yeah.
So, you know, for example, we have Harvey Randall, who's a TV producer.
Right.
And he's initially more concerned with his own career.
Yeah.
And his own personal life.
Right.
Than he is with the comet.
Right.
Like this is just an inconvenience for him.
Yeah, just getting in the way of his plans.
Right.
You know?
Messing up his TV show.
Yeah.
He's trying to produce this TV show.
Right.
It's very important to him.
Yeah. And so he's kind of in denial about the threat of the comet.
Right.
For a long time.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, we have Senator Jellison.
Right.
Who is much more pragmatic.
Yeah, he's kind of quietly preparing for the worst.
Yeah.
The whole time.
Yeah, he's one of the few people who's actually taking this threat seriously.
Right.
And he's trying to do what he can to prepare for it.
Yeah.
And so I think those two characters really represent the two sides of human nature.
Right.
You know, the denial and the resilience.
Right.
And the book does a really good job of showing how both of those sides can come into play in a crisis.
Yeah, it does.
And, you know, it's not always clear which side is going to win.
Right.
You know, it's constant struggle.
It's a constant struggle.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes the book so realistic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you know, it's not a Hollywood ending. It's a very nuanced and complex look at human nature.
Right. It's not like a happy ending.
Yeah.
Where everybody comes together and
right.
everything's great.
It's a very messy and chaotic and uncertain future that the book presents.
Right. And I think that's one of the things that makes it so thought-provoking.
Yeah.
Is that it leaves you with a lot of questions.
Right.
At the end.
It doesn't give you any easy answers.
It does not.
Yeah.
It does not. And it doesn't wrap it up with a neat little bow.
Right.
It's like, okay, this is where we are.
Yeah.
Now what?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that makes it so powerful.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree so.
So we've talked about the comet.
Yeah.
We've talked about the characters. I think the next thing we need to talk about is the impact. And then it happens.
Yeah, the hammer falls.
A hammer falls.
It's the earth.
You know, Niven and Pournelle don't really hold back.
No, they do not.
They paint
They make it real.
Yeah.
Like, you're there.
Yeah, they do a good job of kind of describing the sensory details, you know?
Right.
The earthquakes and the tsunamis. And
it's intense.
Yeah.
And the strange glow in the sky.
Yeah, this kind of green and orange.
Yeah, it's
curdled sky.
It's just a crazy scene.
Yeah, very apocalyptic.
And it's interesting, too, because they show the impact from multiple perspectives.
Right.
You know, we see it from the perspective of people on the ground.
Yeah.
Like Eileen Hamner, she's trying to escape the city with her nephew. Right. And then you've got Harvey Randall, who's looking for his wife.
Yeah.
Trying to find her.
Trying to survive.
Yeah.
And then you've got the astronauts up in Hammer Lab who are watching this all unfold from space.
Which is such an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Because they're up there and they're watching the Earth just get hammered.
Yeah. They're totally helpless.
But there's nothing they can do.
Yeah. They can't do anything about it.
Yeah. It's interesting. They show this in the book. I don't know if it's really true. But they say that from space, they can actually see the shockwave.
Yeah. I think that's probably true.
Moving across the Earth.
I mean, I don't know if you could see it with the naked eye, but I'm sure.
Yeah, but with their instruments, they could see it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And so it just shows the scale of this event.
Yeah, it's just unimaginable.
It's just unimaginable.
The scale of the destruction.
So now everybody's in survival mode.
Right.
Like, what do we do now?
Yeah, the world as they knew it is gone.
Yeah.
And they have to figure out how to survive in this new reality.
And that's when we start to see these different groups emerge.
Right.
Who are trying to rebuild in different ways.
You've got Senator Jellison, who establishes this stronghold up in the mountains.
Right. He's like, come on, everybody. We got to get up here.
Yeah, he's trying to preserve...
if we're going to survive.
Some semblance of order and civilization.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you've got Deke Wilson.
Right, who's got this band of ranchers. Yeah.
And they're kind of like, well, we're just going to go back to the old ways.
Yeah, live off the land. They're going to be self-sufficient.
Yeah. We don't need all this technology and stuff.
The cowboys now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you've got Barry Price.
Right.
Who's the supervisor at the nuclear power plant.
Yeah, he's like, we need to get this power plant up and running.
Yeah.
And if we're going to have any hope of rebuilding.
Yeah. He represents kind of the technical expertise that's going to be needed to rebuild civilization.
Yeah.
So you've got these three different groups.
It's like three different philosophies.
Yeah, three different approaches to survival.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see how they interact with each other.
They all come into conflict eventually.
Right, because they all have different ideas about how things should be done.
Right, and they're all competing for the same resources.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's inevitable that there's going to be conflict.
But it's also interesting to see how they cooperate at times,
right?
You know, because they realize that they need each other.
Right. They need each other to survive.
Yeah.
So it's this weird...
it's a complex dynamic.
Yeah, like a dance.
Yeah. They're fighting with each other, but they're also working together.
They're also helping each other.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a microcosm of
humanity,
of human nature. You know, we're capable of great things,
right?
But we're also capable of terrible things.
Yeah,
and it's that tension,
that makes us so interesting.
Just makes us human.
Yeah,
you know, and I think that's one of the things that Niven and Pournelle are trying to explore in this book.
Right, they're showing us all the different facets of human nature.
Yeah, and it's not always pretty.
No, it's not.
But it's real.
But it's real.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes the book so compelling.
So we've got all these different groups struggling to survive. And then we've got this new threat that emerges.
Right, the New Brotherhood.
The New Brotherhood, which is this kind of like fanatical religious group.
You're led by this charismatic preacher.
Yeah, who's very good at manipulating people.
Yeah, he's a master manipulator.
Yeah.
And he's using the chaos of the comet's impact to build his own power base.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to impose their own
twisted version of order
right on the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're willing to do whatever it takes to achieve their goals.
Yeah, they're not afraid to use violence.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
And so they represent kind of the darkest side of human nature.
The worst of the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're a real threat to the other groups.
Especially the stronghold.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're like this beacon of
civilization.
Of hope in this new world.
Yeah, and the New Brotherhood sees them as a threat to their power.
Yeah.
And so they're determined to destroy them. And as if things weren't bad enough on Earth, the astronauts in Hammerlab, they make this chilling discovery.
They're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What's going on down there?
Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah.
They realize that China has launched a nuclear attack on Russia.
Wow. So it's not just the comet.
It's not just the comet.
Like the comet has kind of
broken the world?
Broken everything. Yeah, like all the rules.
Yeah, all bets are off.
All bets are off.
It's just chaos.
Nobody knows what to do.
Yeah, and so it's this reminder that even in the face of this global catastrophe,
right,
that, you know, human beings are still capable of.
We're still going to fight.
Yeah, we're still going to fight.
Yes.
We're still going to kill each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So back on Earth, though, there's some hope.
Right.
There are these expeditions that go out from the stronghold.
Yeah.
So one of them is going out to try to find other survivors and make alliances.
Right. Which I think is, you know,
a good idea.
It's a sign of hope that even in this, you know, post-apocalyptic world, people are still trying to connect with each other.
Yeah.
They're still trying to rebuild some kind of community.
It's like that human need for community.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We need each other.
Right. And so then the second expedition, they're going out to scout the flooded valley.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out what the world looks like now.
Right.
Like what's changed.
Yeah.
Where are the resources.
How do we survive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a very practical mission.
It's like a recon mission.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're going out to gather information.
Yeah.
Which is essential for survival.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the third expedition.
This one's a big one.
This is the big one.
They're going to try to secure the San Joaquin nuclear power plant.
Yeah, because they realize that if they can get that plant up and running,
that'll give them power.
That'll give them power.
Yeah.
Which they need for everything.
For everything, yeah.
For light, for heat, for communications.
For rebuilding.
Industry.
Yeah.
You know, everything.
It's like the key.
It's the key to rebuilding civilization.
Yeah.
So this mission is crucial.
So, of course, the New Brotherhood.
Of course.
They hear about this.
They're not stupid.
And they attack.
They attack the power plant.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what follows is just this brutal battle.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
Yeah, it's one of the most exciting parts of the book.
Yeah, it's really well written.
Yeah. Niven and Pournelle really know how to write action scenes.
They do.
Yeah, and so you've got these plant workers and engineers.
Yeah, they're not soldiers.
They're not soldiers.
Right. They're just regular people.
They're just regular people who are trying to defend their home.
Right.
And they're up against this fanatical army.
Yeah, it's like David and Goliath.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But they're surprisingly effective.
Yeah, they're smart.
Yeah, they use their knowledge of the plant to their advantage.
They know this place.
Yeah. They're fighting for their lives.
They are.
And so they managed to hold off the New Brotherhood.
It's a big win.
It's a huge win.
Yeah.
But it comes at a cost.
Yeah. John Baker,
the leader of the expedition, he sacrifices himself to save the plant.
Yeah, it's a heroic sacrifice.
It's a real tearjerker.
Yeah.
You know, and it just shows that even in the darkest of times,
right,
that there are still people who are willing to do the right thing.
To put others before themselves.
Yeah, to put others before themselves.
Even if it means giving up their own life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the book ends.
Yeah.
And the stronghold is still standing.
Right. They survived.
They survived.
But the future is uncertain.
It's very uncertain.
Yeah, they're facing a lot of challenges.
Yeah, and it's not clear if they're going to make it.
Right.
Yeah, so it's not a happy ending.
It's not a Hollywood ending.
But it's a realistic ending.
It's a realistic ending.
And I think that's one of the things that makes this book so powerful.
Yeah, it makes you think.
It makes you think.
About what you would do in that situation.
Yeah, what would you do?
Yeah.
If the world ended tomorrow?
Yeah. What would you fight for?
What would be important to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're looking for a book that will make you think.
That will challenge you.
That will stay with you long after you finish reading it.
Then you should definitely check out Lucifer's Hammer.
Yeah, and you can find a link to the book in the show notes.
And don't forget to subscribe to Mindful Moments for more deep dives like this.
Share this one with a friend.
Yeah, tell your friends.
Who loves sci-fi.
Who loves a good post-apocalyptic story.
Until next time, keep those minds sharp.
And those hearts open.